Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to Tank Arcade, the best place for me to grind out the tanks portion of the event we are playing through right now. And not a fantastic start, but I have a backup plan. I was just looking for a little bit of memeing with the wrpl, but that is a tank destroyer that does not fare well at all these days, thanks to Gaijin's repeated and continuous nerfing of everything that explodes. But the Ostwind is my SPAA of choice, and when it comes to your selection, Germany has by far the most numerous examples of fantastic SPAA throughout their tree. America's fairly good at rank 1 and 2 and pretty much trash for the rest of the game until you get to the radar guided SPAA, although the M16 is fantastic as a tank destroyer. But that's not what we're going for now. As you can see, we shoot down enemy aircraft. The enemy team is controlling the field for the entire duration of this match. Usually that would be an occasion for whining, whinging, and soul-searching, but instead it's an opportunity. See, there's two ways essentially to play arcade. Tanks, that is. One, go win the match. Get in your meta vehicle and destroy enemy tanks. Or two, shoot down aircraft and fly out in aircraft. I've already talked about the better way to bomb, so I'll eschew that for once and talk about bringing an SPAA. Now for Operation Summer, you're going to want a rank 3, but that's just fine. There's a certain Pasta Boy clan that has the most overpowered SPAA/TD in the game in the form of the R3T20, and if you actually use it to shoot down aircraft, I will decide to not disapprove of your actions. And you know what, if you want to do something else with it, something I wouldn't normally enjoy, I'm going to go ahead and give you a pass during the event, just because I feel like everybody should be able to play the game the way they like to, as long as it fits with the rules of the game. After all, don't hate the player, hate the game. So that's how I've been grinding out my tanks portion of Operation Summer. You can see that I've also been playing a lot of Tank RB for Flying CAS for the air portion, and Naval Arcade for naval, and it works out really well for me. You do have to develop some skills to be able to do well, and StalinsPimpCane is going to show us how it's swung, how it's done, as he manages, with APFSDS, might I add, to have some fun in top tier. And conveniently, as I sit here, not falling asleep the way I really should, melatonin has been ordered. That's a nice natural sleep aid, by the way. If you have a hard time falling asleep at night, look into it. I'm not a doctor by any means, and I wouldn't want to contradict what your physician has to say, but melatonin is an over-the-counter sleep aid that's natural. Your body produces it when you're in a dark room, and I highly recommend. I spend a lot of time stimulating my eyes, so I don't produce the melatonin that I probably should. So I just picked up some more off of Amazon for $9 for a 6-month supply. So it's a pretty good decision if you're having a hard time catching your Z's. Maybe I'm not referring to anyone in particular, but you know who you are. You're probably too busy to watch this video anyway. So, here we are with Cone's very own StalinsPimpCane, and SPC, whenever he sends me a replay, delivers a banger, and today is no exception. One of the things I noticed about SPC, and I don't think I've had enough conversation with him to find out if this is what he always does, but he has a lineup that is totally full of ground vehicles. It's a different world, and a whirly bird takes him down to begin with. in fact, a Ka-50 premium helicopter with the unguided rockets. And with a nicely shot APFSDS round, SPC takes down what many players consider to be a toxic, unfair, triggering helicopter. But as for myself, I think it's beautiful. I think it's unfortunate and ill-advised that Gaijin would have top-tier premiums in the game, but that's the world we live in, and the Ka-50 is part of that ecosystem. You can see that a first spawn Ka-50 is capable of picking up a kill just like a tank can, but at reasonable engagement ranges, it's very, very vulnerable, as you saw. That was a pretty big target for an APFSDS, and the entire spawn was shooting at him. So, balancing factors. I still consider, for someone that knows their way around ground forces, a tank to be the most powerful tool in the hands of a skilled player. You can spawn so many times in a tank that you really have to be able to shut down ground activities in a cast platform like a helicopter or a fixed wing aircraft, as an Apache goes in, flying above treetop level and firing off the rockets as you do, rockets as you do. And yet, one of the things I noticed about that Apache pilot, as he pops up and drains all of his speed into altitude and immediately gets shot down by a Shilka, is that he probably doesn't have a whole lot of experience in helicopter ground attack, or he hasn't been watching fantabulous people like I think Hunter does a bit of helicopter, and then the absolute number one guy that I've ever seen is a fella that only has a handful of videos on YouTube, but is a shining example nonetheless of fantastic simulator helicopter unguided munitions gameplay, and that is Captain Falcon, also known as Bruce Leroy. In fact, I interviewed him, so there's both a good talk with him and a link to his YouTube channel on one of my interview videos if you're interested. And I say that because I really am a fan of helicopters in War Thunder. I don't think that they're meta. I don't think they're ever going to be anything other than completely imbalanced, either underpowered or overpowered. And I just love the way they look. I love the way they fly. It's a really neat thing that doesn't really belong in this game, but is in this game anyway. And all of that is avoiding what I was saying earlier about the fact that tanks still rule the roost in the hands of an experienced player, and it all comes down to the lineup system and the spawn points mechanic. You get spawn points just for getting shot in a tank, and medium tanks / MBTs in this game cost a tiny amount of SP compared to cast platforms, even helicopters, and especially top tier jets. So, I mean, the loadout alone for a cast, say a Phantom, costs as much as an entire tank spawn sometimes. So you're looking at SPC with already 2 deaths, and now coming back in the beautiful XM1, a vehicle that again is probably ill-advised as a premium, since it's so high tier that new players coming to the game, picking up the best tank they can possibly buy, and then jumping into matches without knowing, oh, I don't know, that binoculars even exist, completely destroys both the experience and the win rate of American teams in the battle ratings that it populates. And at the same time, again, This tank makes so much sense in the hands of a skilled player like you see in SPC. Another thing that I noticed about StalinsPimpCane is that he is an aggressive player. He's using that stabilizer, he's using his thermals and his binoculars to identify targets, he's pushing up to advanced positions. He's not sitting in the spawn like those 3 or 4 players that I see back there, being not so useful to the team as they try and decide on a strategy or maybe just survive the match so that they avoid paying the repair cost. But repair costs for a lot of American tanks at top tier are actually pretty low, and in the case of the XM1 they are fantastically low. This is one of the most handheld tanks in the game, and it really is designed to give new players of the game the best top tier experience that they can possibly have as complete noobs. The fact that you can buy that, some people say it's a bad idea, some people say it's a good idea. I think somewhat a lower number of people, although that includes everyone on the marketing team for Gaijin. I mean, you gotta realize this thing prints money $50 at a time. That's a lot of moolah, especially considering how many people pay nothing to play this game. SPC, utilizing another feature that new players probably know nothing about, crouching the tank down using its hydropneumatic suspension, which lowers its profile significantly to the point that it's barely taller than those USSR skillet tanks that it punches holes in oh so nicely when its stealth allows it to. That's not going to save you from a missile from a BMP-3 who had that dank flank on you. And yet, out comes the reward vehicle, non-premium Magash. No, not Magash. It's Merkava, the chariot of the Israeli Defense Forces. A tank designed to stand alone if the need arises against overwhelming, well, what would for any other nation be overwhelming numbers of enemy tanks, and yet the history of Israel has proved to have beaten the odds a few times in recent history. In fact, history so recent that the wounds are still open, and I wouldn't want to risk getting this video removed from live.warthunder now, would I, for being political. Actually, yeah, I'm not super impressed with the decisions that Live's moderators make, especially after listening to the European Canadian rattle off a list of all of the things that he's had hidden from Live.warthunder by moderators just because. I mean, I get a huge anger boner every time somebody censors me, but I had no idea how much he's been shafted. But you know what? You win some, you lose some, and you just win by living better. And that's been entirely the story for SPC here. Again, the spawn point system. SPC has 6 kills and 3 deaths. He's at a 2 KD, which is, that's really good for top tier. That's not bad for a great match. The kind of thing you'd feel like setting in for a replay video. And the fact that he's been able to spawn into this match 4 times and take some and give some damage and still keep on participating really speaks to the advantage that you have if you get good with ground forces and build. And this is something that took an incredible amount of time for SPC to do, grinding out the event for this tank and grinding out $50, $55, something like that for the XM1. Now, if you got the free Abrams pack, that's the way to go back in the day. So let's all thank Sean for his we'll call it just his frustration fueled micro rant that earned us the free Abrams eventually. I think it's time for another controversy in War Thunder. So let's talk about lawn darts before this round wraps up. And that is that recently, just before recording this video, and I suspect things will change because there's already been a community outcry. Wow, that was some fast change. Come on, Gaijin, think fast. The community is freaking out because at top tier, Gaijin have equipped most tanks with Heat FS, which, as you may be aware, has received several very significant nerfs at top tier, reducing its performance significantly as vehicles that have better and better protection against chemical action rounds have also come to the game. Funny how that works. Buffs and nerfs following new introductions to the game. War Thunder is not a balanced game, okay? It's a sandbox, and we are the cats. And you can shit on it or you can play with it, but both of those things are happening here, and that's just the environment that you're coming into if you decide to play in this park. But sometimes Gaijin goes too far. And by that I mean sometimes they make decisions that they're allowed to make for reasons that make sense to them, and you gotta realize that there's a bottom line for this company. They need to make money, and if they lose money in one place, they've got to get creative and find a way to pick up the slack. And without knowing enough about what else is going on to comment on anything, I think that it's fairly obvious that replacing stock APFSDS rounds, which are the standard for top tier, as you may be aware, it is almost always the only round that you should ever bother bringing, with Heat FS only being reserved for if you need a low velocity round, or you get a special spicy round for shooting down aircraft, or if you need to hull break something and you actually count on the hull break functioning properly. I know, big list of caveats, which basically mean lawn dart is life at top tier, and Gaijin is fully aware that the majority of players who are willing to pay to skip the grind on modules will pay to get to that APFSDS. The fact that it's stock on several vehicles means that they don't have to pay. And so they weren't paying. And Gaijin thought, aha! We've lost money one place. Let's pick it up by having top tier players pay for one more thing. But that's not good. Because, again, it massively reduces the enjoyment of top tier vehicles when they're stock, and it just throws a wrench into so many things that were already not that well balanced in the first place. In other words, it pisses off everybody that plays top tier. So we'll see where that goes, but I thought I would talk about that and just give a little bit of my point of view. I don't play a lot of top tier, but I'm especially not looking forward to using absolute trash Heat FS when it's nigh impossible to defeat enemies with it in an environment where they have access to the God round if they pay for it, or if they've been in that pool for longer than me. Catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.